Oh, hello. It is a Monday morning. Let's see. I guess I can. This is right in front of my face. I know, but that's probably not an altogether bad thing. Um, but the thing is that I'm working on stuff right here, right in front of me, like there. And I want the light and the camera to also be on that. And so, and I want it to not be terribly distorted by being at a sharp angle or something. Just so, um, since my head and the camera want to be in the same place, then they're in the same place. That's how physics works. Okay, well that's one way to start Monday morning. Um, Last week I finished the 4 members of the Dungeons and Dragons NPC group, the Divorcees. The Divorcees are also members of the mercenary group that our group joined. It's called the Company of Blades. Our group is Midnight Brunch. There's a long story behind that. And in order to find out what that story is, you need to watch all of the 100 and some episodes of Dice and Dungeons and Dragons show on YouTube, or listen to it as a podcast, and you'll get the backstories, and you'll learn how we spent maybe 80 or 90 episodes or something without a name. Group always has to have a name, but we didn't have one, and finally we did, and it's Midnight Brunch, and there's reasons for that. Anyway, I promise that was a resolution to not use that word all the time. So I guess it's okay if I let it slip out like once or twice during each stream. The other was that I was going to keep my workbench clean, and I did that just before the stream started today. I put away about 15 little bottles and squeeze containers and stuff of paint and washes, and they're gone now. Well, they're not gone. They're put away. Here, I'll show you what I was working on. Instead of looking at a paper towel, okay, you can look at these guys. These are the Divorcees. The other group that we're with, the Serpentis 6, those are Dragonkin. Those were painted a long time ago. And, dragons are different primary colors like blue and red and green and black. And I think there's a metallic one, a silver one. And they got painted that way, and they kind of unintentionally, they ended up looking very much like anime team. Those guys are showing up on our show pretty much as we speak. So we're recording our episodes. The Serpentis 6 has shown up to help us fend off a gigantic battle. It's just this. It's really big and messy, and so far nobody's gotten mostly killed yet, but we only had one turn in the battle. So there's plenty of opportunity yet for things to happen. I think there's been one fireball already, not by us, but by the opposition. And Zoria cast her most powerful damaging spell, this big tidal wave thing, which was very impressive. That doesn't really what high production value on this stream. Very, very high production value. In fact, the production value is so high that I'm going to call on my director and camera operator. I'm going to call on them right now and ask them to move the camera so that it will show these guys kind of like face on. Here's the camera operator doing the camera operating thing. And the director is telling them how to do it. not doing it very well. The camera operating guy is not that great. There. This camera operating guy has to manually hold the camera in place. Ooh, look at that. Oh, panning. That's pretty sophisticated stuff, moving the camera like that. So these are the divorcees. There's 4 of them. They were printed on our rosin 3D printer a while ago. And then given to me to paint. And just so that I didn't get confused about what I was looking at, okay, heaven forbid I get confused by what I was looking at, they were very nicely labeled so that I knew that this was an archer, okay, because otherwise I might not have known that. And that's a gnome cleric. Can't really, it's kind of a level 9 cleric or something because she's got a fireball. An orc spellcaster. I never would have guessed that was an orc because of the long flowing hair. It's not like the orc fangs would have given it away or anything. And then there's a halfling with metal armor and no shoes. That was important to tell me that so that I didn't mistake the toes, the toes sticking out there as something other than the feet of the halfling. So I think this was meant to be helpful and not sarcastic, but I guess it turned out to be kind of both. It was, maybe a little unnecessary, but there it is. And I finished these guys last week. They're divorcees, and so some of them have reacted differently to the divorce than others. Like the orc decided, to like go all out disco, I guess. Just ready to. I don't know about the hair. I think the hair is a dye job. I'm pretty sure it's a dye job. There it is. It's casting spells. Probably, oh yeah. Probably goes to like the divorcee bar and starts singing "I Put a Spell on You" because, an orc in a divorcee bar who's a spellcaster would do that. The gnome cleric, she brightened up too. Yep. I think that came out pretty well. She obviously spent a fair amount of her spare cash on footwear, got glossy boots with brass embellishments. The outfit came out okay. She's carrying a shield. There was nothing on the shield, so I painted it pink to go with her outfit and put some nonsense sigils on it. But they look okay. I think they look okay. And I think her hair, though, I'm not sure. Her hair might be tinted, but I don't think it's quite a complete dye job like the orc. The elf archer, I was told, after our DM saw the first 2, said, well, yeah, that's how they respond. But the elf archer is responding to the situation in a different way. And I was going to paint him kind of rangery colors, like, greens and tans and stuff. But the decision was made that the elf archer was just going to be beige. The only thing that isn't beige is its quiver. Their quiver. This is the one they had before the divorce, and he didn't want to invest in a new one. Just let his clothes fade. So I think that was okay. But the halfling, no shoes, metal armor, she's just, it's like, well, whatever. Just, I got metal armor. I got this kind of skirt-like thing. I got a bag. I got a really big sword. with runes on it. So I had fun this was fairly easy to paint, it turned out. I thought it would be more of a challenge, but when I decided to just do all the armor in metallic, the only fancy parts are the little skirt thing. I don't know if you can see it, but it has the bag is a lighter red and the edging on the skirt's the same color as the bag, and the edging on the bag is the same color as the skirt. And there's the bare feet. When I put the wash, I was going to fix that. When I put the wash on, it seeped between her toes, and now she's got a dirty foot. I'm not sure. I was going to fix that, but then I put all the paint away. Ooh, the camera guy. Oh, the director says, go back to the long shot. The camera operator did that there. I put all the paints away, and I can't remember what color I used for the skin tone. But now I remember it was this one, the one with the it looks like the paint is leaking through the cap. So I wasn't really planning to do any painting today because these guys are done, and I was going to go back to the Cebolla S21. But I think I'm going to fix this before I do anything else. Now that these minifigs are done, it's not like I'm done with minifigs. I still got a maxi fig. I've got this gift. This was gifted to me for Christmas. This was a giant-sized my figure. This is like Furbog Fighter with the flaming longsword and the ice dagger. Initially, he had a very ill-fitting Tashira-Noon armor. Tashira-Noon is a elf cult, a militaristic elf cult. He was taught by someone who escaped the cult and had inherited the Tashira-Noon armor from the elf, and it didn't fit. But then I later acquired full plate, but then later acquired a set of magical armor, which is unfortunately damaged, though. That was worn by Remarden, who was the founder of the alternative, not cult, I guess. The good member of the cult. One of the two good members of the cult. And so the figure that shows up in our D&D show is in full plate, so it's just like metallic with a dark wash on it, that sort of thing. But in honor of the magical Remarden armor, which is pretty much mithril, it's mithril heavy plate, I'm going to make an effort to paint this figure in those colors, which are green, pretty much like a glossy green. I'll show you. This is my very original figure. It's kind of a glossy green with silver and when someone's really up there, gold accents. At some point, I will get around to actually painting this figure, but today I want to get back to the Savoya. I'll explain what I'm doing and why. Well, let me fix her toes. Take these off so I can see closer up. Put the brushes away, and now I can't pick them up. Slippery fingers. I'm not sure what happened here. I think it looks actually like the top of the bottle got punctured somehow, inside or out, and that the paint leaked and the dried paint sealed it. I guess that's okay. There's so little of this that needs to be done. I'm I'm going to make an effort to just get a little paint off the tip of the bottle. Nope, it's not going to work because that is in fact what happened. Look at that. There isn't any top to this bottle. And so the paint oozed out. That's not a particularly good thing. I'm going to fix the feet, but then I'm going to come back and fix the bottle before I go any further, because I don't want to waste the whole container of paint. Pull the plug off, the paint plug. I wasn't going to use this, but now I need to. Oh, okay. That's too bad. The paint was backed up in the bottle, and it's trying to get a little drop. I think I needed that much paint, not that. So that's going to be some wasted paint. These things protect the tips of the little brushes. A lot of little brushes come with them. I'd recommend that if you get a little brush with one of those, that you save it, that you always put it down where you can find it again, as opposed to just setting it down, forgetting where it is, knocking it on the floor, losing it, wishing you had it, can't find it. Dry brushing, tops of the toes, feeling at that. Wasn't much, but it looks better now. And I've got this blob of paint that is a waste of paint now. And it's Monday. There it is. As I fix the paint bottle, I'll be doing I want to get the paint off of the top here. I think it'll just scrape off. Maybe not. Maybe it will. Not much is going to stick to this plastic. I think contact cement will. I'm going to use that. I've got some good contact cement that I'm going to stick on there. To cap it off. We could just use a little piece of cardboard. I could be using a tool to do this instead of my fingernail, but my fingernail actually is a tool. I've got paint underneath it. Need a little circle of something that will stick to this. I make a big deal about it. I am going to use cardstock if I had some, which I don't have. Be right back. I have to find something I wasn't expecting to have to find. When I saw this, I thought that's kind of weird, but I didn't expect to get what I got. I'm just going to use the end of this popsicle stick. I need to cut it off. Down, snap it off. That didn't work. I've got this. Okay, I'm being impatient today. I should have just cut it all the way through, but I didn't. And now I've got this big chunk of wood over the edge and nothing much to hold on to. And I've got a very sharp blade, 1/8 of an inch away from my fingertip. Is this a recipe for disaster? Or is this... There we go. I split it. Start from the beginning. Using the other end of the popsicle stick. Holding it, hopefully, a safe distance away from the tip. Cutting through it. This wood is fraying all around the edges. I wonder what... It's really not your strongest wood. So weird. It cuts like the first dirt of it really well, and then it just seems to bog down. This is just, what can I say? This is going like really not well. Here, use a different tool. I have this little saw. I'll be using this again later. I invested in this. This is a low budget show, as you can tell. Okay, I've got pieces of the sides of boxes. I've got paper towels. I've got popsicle sticks, but this is a tool. I spent a fair amount of money on this. There's a couple of things that are expensive. And this one, I have needle files. Those are not terribly expensive, but you'll see some of those later. But I bought this for a very specific purpose, which is to take plastic parts of model off of the sprue or the little trees that they're molded onto. And, as you can see, it does cut, but who would have thought that snapping like 3/8 of an inch off the end of a popsicle stick could end up taking 10 minutes? I can tell you that people who watch this stream would have thought that, because that's the kind of thing that happens on this stream. It's like when I spent an entire 2 hours and 45 minutes sanding down, and you'll see that again probably, sanding down some filler that I used to fill in the holes, the circles that were mold flaws, not intentionally put there from the injection molding process. I'm certain that we'll see those later today because they're almost like a 99% sure to show up. The pieces that I'm going to be removing from the sprues today. So needle file. There's these little files like this, okay, and they're pretty fine in in terms of their the raspiness, I guess. I'm filing off the corners. These are really helpful in modeling to do rough shaping. You don't want to do fine shaping with these, really, because they leave scratch marks that have to be polished out. But for rough shaping, and you'll see some of that later, like removing 95% or 90% of the remnants of the sprue that are left on the model piece before the rest is sanded off and polished. These are really handy, and this is just a square flat one. There's a round one that comes to a sharp point. This is way too big. It's going to look weird. I'll just say that. It's going to go on the top here, but it's going to cover it. It's going to cover it so that the paint doesn't ooze out and dry like it did before, between Friday and today. I'm going to use some of this. This is contact cement. It works pretty well. It's very viscous. I was using this on the models, and it holds really well, but it's hard to work with because it's so gel-like. So I have some new stuff that's much more liquid, and you'll see that in a little while, because I'll be using that to attach. Good. I'll be using that to attach the exhaust pipes to the engine of the Savoia. So this goes on, and then it just sits there for a bit. After it sits there for a bit, the two parts come in contact with each other, except it's not really the parts that come in contact with each other. The contact cement comes in contact with the contact cement and binds to itself really well. So I think this will work. This is trash now. This is trash now. This might be useful for something. You never know. I don't throw things away usually because you never know when something might be helpful and useful. Okay, well, the divorcees are going to be leaving the scene here. They could say so long to the divorcees. Elf Archer. Goodbye, Elf Archer. And they're going to be set up on a shelf over there that you can't see. Gnome Cleric. Orc Spellcaster. You probably have... What's up with that? That's just dirt, thankfully. They probably have names, but I don't know what they are. So they're up and out of the way now so that I don't have to worry about damaging them or knocking them on the floor and breaking things, which is a likely thing to have happen. Okay, I'm letting that set for a bit. And since I'm moving around, I'm going to get the Savoya and the Dun box. Yeah, I'm going to get those and set them up out of the way and then show you some things. This is the Dun box. I'll show you what's in there. This is a Savoya, the S21. It's a 1/48th scale model. You can tell it's 1/48th because it says modeling scale 1/48th in Italian. The whole box cover is done in Italian because Porco Rosso was set in Italy, and it's painted in Italian colors. Okay, right, Italian red. Actually, that's the name of the red. And then the green and white and red stripes on the tail and the wings. And when the model is done, completed, it's supposed to look like that. It's bigger than that, okay, because that's pretty tiny, but it's going to look like that. And then the fuselage actually lifts up off of the plane. That's how it's supposed to work. And you can see the detail of the inside of the plane, the fuel tank and the machine guns and the cockpit. Okay. And that's done. And I did a pretty good job. It looks pretty much like that. It looks almost as good. And so, yeah. So anyway, the box top is done in Italian. The model itself, though, is Japanese. And so all the instructions, including the painting guide, are all in Japanese. I wonder what these say. I've done Google Translate on some of the instructions, but I haven't done on this stuff. Put that there. This is weighted long enough. I'm just going to attach the two pieces together. Not perfectly flat. A little gap there. Just oozing it around a little bit to fill in the gap. There. Now, reminds me of building models when I was a kid when the tube cement would form filaments. So that's going to be misleading because that's not the color here. There we go. I got a whole blob of it. This is a dumb thing I'm doing. Here, I dipped the cover in the blob of paint, and that'll dry sometime in the next week. But there, it's sealed now, and someone's going to wonder what that's all about, and then maybe they'll ask, maybe they'll just pull it off, and then they'll go, "Oh, it was covering a hole." Since I've got wet paint all over it now, I have to put it somewhere. Sure, that looks like a safe spot. I think I'm going to keep that here. This is a reminder of what it's like to be old and to be taunted by the young'uns. Not only am I going to keep that, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to put it over there where the models are, where the minifigs are, but I'm going to put them in the wrong place. That'll be funny. Not really. actually kind of stupid, but you're not seeing it because it's way over here, and I'm not going to make something of that, probably. Get rid of this. So I'm going to be, you'll see me rummaging inside of this box a little bit later in the stream because I'm going to be pulling out the parts for the next section of the model, which is the fuselage and the tail and the floats. I'll get to that when I get to it. Set it here and show you the done box. I put the pieces that are done in the done box. They are the inside. See, I told you it came out pretty well. Oh, Roger, hi, I haven't seen you in a long time. How have you been? You must be really busy. Because I was gone for a couple of weeks and then I came back and yeah, haven't seen you. So it's really good that you're there. Thanks for dropping in. So I'm just showing off the part that's done so far, the done box. That's the inside of the Savoia. That's the sitting down in the the cockpit porco. It actually sits on here like that because this is a seaplane and it floats, and so there's no wheels on it. So if it's on land, oh no, what's wrong? Why is today a sad day? Sorry to hear that. Wait for old Roger. Oh my God. I can't believe it. That you were working, I know you were putting in and things were going really well. Well, that I don't know. I don't even know what to say. That's just horrible. Of course, it's just business, but you know, business is really unkind. So is there a chance they could recall you, or do you need to find another job? I know you're not lucky enough or unlucky enough to be old like me, where it's like you might as well not have a job because there's hardly any jobs you can do because you're old. You know, you can be a helpful hardware guy, I guess, that kind of thing. So what that like on Friday, just as while you were leave for the weekend, they just came. Oh, by the way, don't show up on Monday. Oh, it was this. Oh, it was today. Right at the end of the day on Monday, they made you come in on Monday and work the entire day. Well, and so you're going to watch the stream instead. Oh my. I'm not really sure what to say or do right now. Old Brogger, if for the very few people who pay attention to this, as opposed to the tens of thousands of followers that old Brogger has. He just runs this amazing modeling show. It's not just even a stream; it's a show has really high production value. I really admire it, and it's the work he does is just outstanding in terms of skill as a modeler, and has been incredibly helpful to us as well by promoting Dice and Dungeons on his stream, and I need to thank him for that. But that's just, oh my. No, I mean it won't. No, losing it, I lost a job twice. When, obviously a long time ago, because I guess the third time is when I just stopped working. But it's, yeah, I don't know what to say. Other than that, that's just a really difficult thing. It's sometimes, maybe, you've got so much else going on in your life. It's going to feel, you're going to go from being overwhelmingly busy to what am I going to do today? But I'm very, very sorry that happened. I guess I need to go on with this. But I want anybody and everybody who knows Old Brogger to be supportive. Yeah, I don't know what the job market is like there. Here in the States, it really depends on where you are. There are some. The unemployment rate is still pretty low, but not all the jobs are terrific jobs. And you could be working for the federal government, and you never know from one moment to the next now if you're going to have a job. It's really become weird. Yeah, looking for a new job you're just putting yourself out there again and trying to sell yourself. I don't know what it's like for you, but I've never really been good at that. I was one of those people who are better at doing a job than getting a job. I hope you have a lot of success and that you have a little bit of time to yourself, to relax, maybe as the light starts coming back there in Denmark. Yeah, I know. It's just sometimes you can't bounce back that fast. You have to get a resume together, and that's good. You live in a country that has health care, so you don't have to worry about that like you do here in the US. So you've got some time, and maybe you've got some time to make some choices about whether you wanted a specific job or not, rather than just having to do what you've got. No, this is the engine compartment for the sits on top of the Savoia. The engine is on the very, very top of the plane. It's up here. This is this bit that sits above the wings. And the exhaust pipe on here is brown. I don't know. It's supposed to be metallic. I painted it metallic. And I gave it a little bit of a blue highlight to make it look, it's kind of subtle, but just, where things overheat. I'm going to turn it this way because of my handedness. These are supposed to go on here. It just can't do it by hand. I'm going to try to use tweezers without scratching the paint. Two of these up here and here have tiny little prongs on them that are supposed to fit into tiny little holes. It's going to be like that. They're slippery, they're slidey, they're supposed to fit in like that and then somehow stick. They use contact cement for this because, as you can see, getting this thing in place is really hard. And if I put cement on here that like dissolve the paint, it would be a disaster. I don't know how this is supposed to happen. I guess I'm just going to put cement on the little bits that are supposed to be in those little holes, and then try to match them up. And it'll grab onto itself so it won't keep popping off like that. But this is not the easiest thing in the world, is it? No. The whole thing looks pretty decent, though. And I have to thank old Brogger for advice on how to paint some of this. Just part of him being another really helpful person. Well, what I was going to talk about nuclear holocaust in. Oh, thank you. Yeah, I think it came out okay. I got the seams pretty much covered up. This had to be repainted twice, and there's some little flaws on it, but I don't know if you saw it, but I primed it and then I painted the inside, and some of the paint got on the outside, some of the metallic, and it turned out that the red paint is translucent, so that when I spray painted it, the dark paint showed through on the sides here and on a couple of other pieces. And so I needed to sand off most of the paint and then reprime it and repaint it. And it came out all right, especially if you look at it from a respectful distance. The last little bits like this are supposed to be, it's that the hard part is done, right? But obviously that isn't the case. How is the family taking it? Are they being really supportive, I'm hoping? the family makes it, how they respond makes a big difference. What they might say. That's good. They're probably so. A couple things could happen at this point. They could decide that you being home is like the best thing that ever happened because you've got time for them and you seem to be more relaxed and all of that. Or they might decide that you being home is like the worst thing that ever happened. They'll start giving you copies of newspaper ads for different jobs and things. I'm just sort of joking partially on that, but sometimes you might be surprised that when you're home, when you hadn't been, because you'd been working so many hours, that the family decides that this is a really cool thing. Dad, don't go back to work. We like it like this. That could happen. How does job hunting work there? Here in the States, it's gotten really kind of weird in some ways for a lot of jobs. For some jobs, you get like a recruiter. You go to a guy who's called a headhunter, and their job is to try to match people who are looking for work with jobs. Sometimes, you need to just go to a place and try to work your way in and see somebody. Sometimes you send your resume into this operation that scans them and looks for keywords. That turns out to be a really crummy way for people to hire, because what they do is they end up getting people who are really good at kind of scamming the algorithm. I'm just waiting for the contact cement to settle a little bit. I'm going to try these other tweezers. Yeah. So when I used to look for work, I had to find a published ad. Like the state government would publish positions. There wasn't an online registry because there wasn't any online. Ah, okay. I guess that's okay, as long as it's straightforward and honest and all of that. But I used to have to for university jobs, because I had an academic degree. You know, there were publications where the jobs were posted. That's one thing about the contact cement is it does grab. That actually looks okay. It's always a surprise to me when something works. That seems to have worked. I need to do it to the other side without knocking that off. But yeah, okay. So how does that work then? You apply through a form. No kidding. How does it work on the other end for the employer? Does it then like it like there's an algorithm that kind of tries to match what you're offering with what they're looking for? Because I know the ones that they have here, they're not not necessarily very good at doing that. Real person. That's pretty amazing. Yeah, not like an algorithm that says, well, I'm just an algorithm or I'm artificial intelligence or something like that. They think that's real smart, like I'm a real smart thing here. And then it pretends to match the applicant with the job and does a really poor job of it. That's what happens when you live in a civilized country. Get banned now because I said a naughty thing. I said that this isn't a civilized country. Okay. Positioning this one was a little difficult. Always, the parts on this model, there have been some issues with it, but for the most part, the parts fit together really nicely. This is a very well constructed model, except for a few things. So, do you get to choose where that came from? It's a little micro magnet. I can show you how it's supposed to be used, but I don't know why it's out here. You get to choose where the application and resume gets sent, like when you send it in, or does the database have some sort of matching algorithm that tries to match you up with certain jobs depending on how you responded? Looking at alignment here. Came out okay. This is about to go into the done box. This bit here, this is a maintenance access hatch. It's supposed to be cemented on, but there's some detail of the engine compartment back here. And can't see it. The hatch is off. Just sets on like that. You can see, why did they put that even on the model if it was just going to be covered up? Well, the answer to that is, I don't know. That's why I'm not attaching the cover permanently. But I'm going to leave it on so it doesn't get lost. I see. Okay. So you apply for a specific job in the database, and it just sends it directly to the company. And like the director of HR or whatever will review the ones that are sent along. Well, that's something. It's pretty rapid. Can you start tomorrow? Come in for an interview today. I want to see. And then you could come the next day. It sounds like that, like they were really eager to bring you on at that point. Okay, this is now a done piece. This is steps 5 through 7 in the instruction manual. 5 through 7 in the instruction manual are now completed, and I'm going to be moving on to this, which is why I'm going to be diving into the box and pulling these parts out, sanding down the rough edges, getting rid of the sprue marks, sort of thing. And then the vertical stabilizer, the tail is 2 parts. Those need to be cemented together and sanded down so that the seams don't show. And if we look ahead, you can see that the same is true, that the wings are in 2 parts, as are the floats. And so depending on how it's going today, I'm going to take all these parts out because they need to be prepped and then assembled and then painted. The fuselage, I guess the way this is put together is that we'll have to see how that goes. It's sort of tempting to put everything together and paint it all at once. I don't know. I've done that kind of out of step a couple of times when it doesn't make sense to paint things the way they're set up, if that makes any sense. Oh no. Oh no, oh no, oh no. I'm just looking at this and going, I made a big mistake. I have to check this. Okay. Sometimes it's a good thing when they are desperate to avoid it. That could be a bad sign. But if you apply for a job and they offer you something, okay. I'm sorry. What I was just hooting about was the location of the filler on the fuel tank, because at the very, very end, there's a hatch. There's a hatch that goes over the fuel tank. You can't see it there. Okay. When this is set on, and the filler has to be at the front of the plane. And fortunately, I did put the filler at the front of the plane. Well, since this box is open, I'm going to put this in there. Thank you so much for dropping in. Wow. And I hope that you find something only as quickly as you want. Okay. I guess what I mean by that is that, if you need some time, it would be great if you were able to take some time. But if you want to get back to work right away, I wish you well. But thanks for dropping in, and hope to see you on Wednesday. I have to leave early on Wednesday. I have an appointment, so I'll be going only until about 12:30, 12 or 12:30 on Wednesday, just as a heads up. I'll mention that again later. Okay, so that's the done. That's in the done box, and I'm going to put the done box over on the side where it won't be a problem. If you are not a follower of Obrogger, you should become one. A lot of people are, and they enjoy it because his modeling show is just amazing. I don't know what to say. He does shockingly shockingly cool things with unusual materials sometimes. Well, I got that put together and only used up an hour. But support Obrogger. Go on YouTube and become a subscriber, because I know he's had an explosion of subscribers at the end of the year last year. Just like tens of thousands, seriously, tens of thousands of people joined up. And I know that they're enjoying it. You need to get these parts. These little struts, okay, 10, A9 through 12, I read these instructions in Japanese. I got a translation, and it said what I was afraid it was going to say, which is you have to put each one on individually because they're all different. And if you take them off and lose track of which is which, you're going to have a problem. So don't. Essentially, that's what they said. So those are going to be left on the sprue so that the numbers are associated with them. And then when this thing is put together, then those will be put on one at a time very carefully. And what they do on the real airplane, and they do on the Model 2, is they keep the horizontal stabilizer aligned with the fuselage. I'm going to open this up and see what I'm getting into here. There's a bunch of red parts. What I don't need are these. Okay. I don't need these. These are the next on the next page. The wings. Okay, these are the wings here. And then little bits at the very end, like this here is the hatch that goes over the gas tank. Okay. And this doesn't show up until right at the very, very end. It goes over the rest of the engine compartment. So this I can sort of set aside. These gray bits down there, these gray bits. Yeah, that's 8-1. Hi. Oh, this. There it is there. There, that's A1. I would have lost that. That isn't, it looked like a really big thing. Okay. It looked like a really big thing, but it's not. It's a tiny thing. It goes on the side. This model is so detailed that it's got, that's the airspeed measuring thing. The little propeller turns, and when it turns, it moves a gauge that says how fast you're going. These are those little struts that are supposed to not come off of the tree. Somewhere on there. That I'm going to have to use a magnifier to see are the numbers. Yep. 9, 10, 11, 12. The parts I need back here, okay, is this one, which has already fallen off. That, and these, and that, and this. Yeah, I'm not going to take these off yet because those probably, oh yeah, and then the whole fuselage thing, right? Yeah. I very carefully wrapped something up in here. What it was. Very, very carefully wrapped up that. That makes sense that I carefully wrapped that up. That is the canopy. Mm-hmm. Good thing. Good thing that I noticed that it was very carefully wrapped. Okay, I'm going to start taking some things off of the screw here. And this is where I use the little saw, because this is a tip for anybody who's doing models who, is fairly new at it, is these things are injection molded and they're attached. You can see the attachment points here. And when I was a kid, I would just break those off. And sometimes it doesn't matter. Like here, the screw is attached to these tabs, and these tabs go into the fuselage back here, and they become invisible. In this case, they're not actually. That is actually not true, and I'll show you that in a minute. Because this comes off, and the inside of it actually becomes visible. So, no, this hatch. This is where the engine goes. This hatch is for the fuel tank and to ammunition for the machine guns. But for example, here, it's attached to the leading edge of the horizontal stabilizer. Now, if I were to just break that off, there's a chance that it would break off not here, okay? That it wouldn't break off back here, but it might break off inside this piece. And then that would leave a ragged gap right in a place where you don't want to see it. You don't want to see a ragged gap any place, but that would be very much not a place where you don't want to see it. If that made any sense at all, which it didn't. So I used to use, as a kid, decided that was breaking them off did cause a problem. So I would use a razor blade, and then recently I was using an X-Acto knife. But that's got its own problems because it doesn't necessarily cut very well. So I got this little saw. With a very, very fine blade, and I use it to saw off the part from the screw, so that I'm not if I'm careful. And it takes a while. You have to be patient. It leaves a little bit of the screw on the part, but then I can file and sand that away so that the attachment point becomes invisible. These are going to be difficult. After I get this off, I'll show you why this is kind of a problem. Okay. This is kind of a problem because the attachment point is right at the, you can see it. Right here. Does that focus? It actually comes up onto the surface of, it goes into the surface of the leading edge. Okay, so that if I were to just cut this flush, there'd still be a little bump there on the top and the bottom. So that's going to take some work with filing and sandpaper. Excuse me. Here's the things I hate about the injection molding. See this? For some reason, unknown, a lot of these parts have circles like this. This is one of those rare cases where the circle is in a place where it doesn't show, so I don't need to fill and sand that. It goes inside the slots in the vertical stabilizer. Okay, but there are other places that will be a problem, and I'm guessing on the inside of the fuselage. But I'll wait on that until I get this off and then take a look and see what I'm getting into. After I take these off, I'm going to, oh, look at that. The sprue is attached right to the very, very nose of the plane, where that all needs to be sanded and polished. It's like, what are they thinking sometimes with these attachment points? You know, when you look at a plane, you look at the nose, right? And what do you want? You don't want to see a flaw. Danger. This one is dangerously looking like it could break off inside the fuselage. Even when I file it, I'm going to have to be careful. Yeah, the attachment point. The attachment point is very thin, and there's a chance it could break off right there, and that could be a problem. So this lifts up off. If you remember, if you watched the Dunn box, the inside of the fuselage, the detail there, this sets down onto it. It doesn't attach, it just sets on it. And it comes off, so you can see the inside. But when you take it off, okay, you can see the inside of this. It's possible to turn it over. And this is actually supposed to be painted to, because it's made out of wood. The real thing, this is made out of wood. The inside of this is painted the wood color. And there are circles. Okay, and when these are painted, they're going to show. You can see them. There's one here. So it's a little harder to see, but there's another one here. And then there's one front here. You're in a very, very difficult place to sand. And they're not raised, they're indented. Especially this one. That one's annoying. I'm going to make an effort to sand those out. They're not very deep. I think I can just sand it. There'll be a depression there, but it won't look like a circle. That's something I'm going to try to do. These here are supposed to be the gun ports for the machine guns. technically, they shouldn't be there at all. All right. I mean, those should be, the machine guns are supposed to shoot through here. And they're not going to be able to shoot through there because you can see it's solid plastic. So technically, those should be open. A really, really, really good master modeler would say those should be open and would, in fact, open them up. Actually quite tempting to try to do that. Cut through this. I have to give that some thought because that's kind of a flaw in the design of the model. These are the two halves of the vertical stabilizer. These are attached to each other. They will be cemented together, and I'll show you that in this second too. Getting a model built so it looks really good, you know, it used to be, I was like between the ages of 9 and 15, that you get a model, never sanded anything. I don't recall ever sanding anything. I had a single-edged razor blade. I would scrape some parts where there was excess plastic. Never paid attention to the seams, the glue seams. It always bothered me. There was, they showed. So like these, when they're cemented together, there will be a visible seam right along here. If they're cemented together and held in place, the cement will dissolve the plastic and fill that in. And then I can sand it off and polish it, and it does become pretty much invisible. It's especially bad on the top. And if you look at it here, you can just see how the light reflects differently. The parts there, right at the top, when you look down at the model, you don't want to be seeing a seam there. So that will be a sanding challenge. Same is going to be true of the floats. The floats are supposed to be one solid piece of wood. I think they're made out of wood. Maybe they were made out of metal. I'm not sure. I know the fuselage was designed to be made out of wood, except for things like this, which would be like a metal hatch because it had to support the weight of the engine. Usually on planes like this, like the wings would have been covered with fabric and canvas, really. These parts. As I move forward with this, I might take the wing off. I might do that. I'm not going to do the floats right away. Just move slowly along like this. But thing with the wings is that the same thing. You're going to have attachment points that need to be sanded down. The top and the bottom get cemented together. The whole leading edge is going to have a seam that shows. The floats are the same way. I'm just going to wait on those for a little bit. I'll probably cement them together at the same time I cement the wings and the vertical stabilizer, so that I can just spend some time sanding down the seams. The problem there is that it's important to keep the numbers straight, because they're not the same. These two I think go together, and those two, and they're not interchangeable. So it is a thing when building a model is to pay some attention to what's interchangeable or not. Because if it's not, then later on you might have problems getting it together. The thing you can see here to do about that, I'll show it to you when I'm done taking this off. That is a big piece of plastic that's attached to the leading edge of this wing. Hi. Doesn't matter if you screw it up. I know I like those. I don't have very many of those where it doesn't matter if I screw it up. A while ago, I was painting a giant thing that was supposed to be a piece of rock, and I really liked that because there was no way I could screw it up. So tokens, okay, for the healing potions, so they're all the same. You just have to paint them somehow. I am very sympathetic to not screwing things up and then failing. So far, I haven't screwed anything up yet. Did I just put the instructions? Well, there. A minor screw up. I put the instructions in the bottom of the box when they need to be out. You have a good brush. You have to have a good brush. So this is, I think this is the bottom of the wing. Put paper towel down here. The cardboard is actually quite abrasive. You need to remember that. So there's these issues here with the molding. There's a scratch, and it's deep enough I can feel it. I'm not quite sure what to do about that. I might just try to polish it out. I'm not sure, but I have to be careful polishing the surfaces of the wings, because there's these detail things on here, these little indentations, and I don't want to harm those. The outside of these wings are, other than that scratch, which is not part of the molding process, are done pretty well. The insides are terrible. And here again, you can see all these circles. Fortunately, they put the circles on the inside of the wings so that when they're joined together, they are not visible. That was very thoughtful of them, finally, to do something that wasn't just really bad. Big piece of paper towel down there, because I'm going to be setting these pieces in the box. This is the Porco Rosso figure minifig that I need to paint someday when I feel like painting it. So I need to do some prep work on all these parts. So far, I'm not seeing any huge disasters. There's it's like the vertical stabilizer doesn't have circles printed on it or anything. So this is going to be a matter of filing down the sprue that attached and then sanding it down. The vertical stabilizer just needs to be cemented together, and then I can sand the seam out later. I have to look at this part, make sure it's okay. Circle, but that looks intentional. This holds the wing. This holds the wing up. And it's going to be important that it go on the correct way. It is, I don't think it's symmetric. I don't think it fits both ways. Maybe, I don't know. There's a little bit of a hole in here for something. And I have to be really careful to make sure that that goes where it needs to go. Are the instructions clear? Well, at least you can see the strut. The strut faces there. The triangle, and the strut faces toward the front of the plane, so it goes on like that, not the other way. That's good to know. Yeah, you definitely want to find one like that. I'm finding that I need for this kind of stuff, I'm spending money on like this one brush that I've been using a lot because my really, really fine brush broke. It's a 10-0. But you're definitely gonna want that 5-0. $6 or $7 is a pretty good deal. And really, I found also that sometimes the really expensive brushes fail. The bristles start just curling up. This one, I'm not going to tell you what brand it is, but this is a really nice, cool brush. It comes to like this little bevel point, but the bristles are just splaying. Okay, they're not staying coherent as a point, even when they're wet. And I'm not sure quite why that is or what to do about it. But yeah, the 5-0 brush is a pretty good brush for detail. We used to use those a lot, even for finer detail than using the 10-0 brush. But as I start painting these little minifigs and want to do eyeballs and stuff, the 10-0 became essential, and I'm actually going to, I think, invest in a 20-0 to see how that works. But you also need some bigger brushes, and sometimes those are hard to find in a way that are good. Good bigger brushes. I've got one which has now disappeared. Where's my yellow-handled big brush? Good grief. Huh. I'm going to be needing it sooner than later. Oh, there it is. Somehow got stuck in the box here. This one's been around, as you can tell, this has been around a long time. And not very well kept up necessarily, but this is an amazing brush. These are nice soft bristles. They're broad. There's a little curve to them. They don't go every which way. And so for like painting large surfaces, like when I'm painting the inside of this fuselage, which will have to all be painted this wood color. And it'll have 3 coats, 3 thin coats. This works incredibly well. So I hope it doesn't come undone on me because it's so well used. I can't even tell what it is or where it's from, but it's really something like this. It's like about a 1/4 inch across at the top. It's kind of beveled down, has soft bristles, holds a lot of paint, doesn't leave brush marks because it's so soft. Yeah, that one's really good. I need a sacrificial paper towel here. Not to clean a brush necessarily. I need to clean the plastic dust off the saw. The finer the brushes, the more quickly, and I think it's a problem with the way I clean them. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, but the bristles just sort of, they come undone. They just disappear. Time is it now? Time went really fast and then it slowed down. I'm not doing any painting today because I'm working on the Savoia again. And I put the done box away. I should bring it back and show it off again. But I finished steps 5 through 7 here. The entire engine compartment is now completed. I put the exhaust pipes on today. Now moving on to this, which is the fuselage and the empennage, the tail, the parts for that. These bits go on later. This is a warning down here in Japanese that says you have to put them all in the right spot, and if you screw it up, it'll be a real mess. So leave them on the tree and keep track of which number goes where. Doesn't say it that way, but that's what it means. And then the wing and the floats get cemented together, and the cement lines, especially on the floats, will need to be very carefully polished out because I don't want seams to show on the floats. Up here, there's something I need to translate. At some point in the future, the stripes are supposed to happen, and the kit comes with decals. There's a green and white decal on either side of the tail, and then the same thing on the wings, the wing tips. And those are important decorative items on this model. But I think there's an option to paint them on, and I might try to do that. I might try to very carefully tape this up. Okay, here's the issue here. The stripes go on the tail. Okay, above the horizontal stabilizer. You can see it there. I'm going to check that out with the decals. But the way this looks is that if I were to try to paint the green and the white stripes on, by masking it and spraying it on, and then masking and spraying it on, which I know will look a lot better than I should do that before I assemble it. And here's why. Okay. This is the forward part. The stripes are on here. Oh, the stripes are part of this too. This goes on like this. Okay. When this is assembled, like that, this is painted red. This goes in like this. Okay. The stripes are all above this. And taping this, the vertical stripes, taping this so that I can paint the white first, and then taping that and then painting the green, probably one over the other. Like I would paint it red. Did I paint the red first? Might be best to paint the white first. Paint the whole thing white because that's the lightest color. And then tape it and paint the red, and then tape it the other way and paint the green. But in any case, it would be much easier to do that if that wasn't there. So I can tape a nice line right across that. And then the tape can come down to it and not have to bump into this. I really need to think that through, and I don't have the paint yet anyway. So I'm not sure how that's going to go. I may end up just doing something else altogether while I ponder whether or not I want to take a chance at messing it up. What I'm going to do for a bit here is I'm going to file the sprue off close to the surface and then finish it with sandpaper. This cuts pretty quickly, but it also leaves scratch marks. I get this down really close and then finish it with a sandpaper so that it doesn't leave scratch marks. On this, okay, there's it's right at the top. This one has to be kind of careful. The one at the bottom, these two at the bottom, these tabs go into the fuselage, and they present their own issues. And I'll show you that after I get these cleaned up. Since I'm trying to do this model as A, not a B minus, but an A quality model, and so far I've been, I think, pretty successful. Yeah, it's really funny. The little brushes are more expensive than the big ones. You would think like a 5-0 and a 10-0 and a 20-0 would be the cheapest ones because there's hardly any bristles, right? You just got a handle with hardly any bristles, but they charge more for them. I find that, I don't know, I'm a little surprised by that. Obviously, the cost of the bristles is pretty small. Maybe it's the manufacturing. Maybe if you have a lot of bristles, if you get like 90% of them in place and some fall out and all, that's okay. But if you've only got like 5 bristles to begin with, they all have to be just perfect. So I'm not done taking off the sprue completely on this piece, but I want to show you what comes of it. When this is cemented together, the inside, this pit comes off. This comes off the top. See how it is here? There's the inside detail, and then this just sets down on top of it. This is finished, all right? This is done. This goes on top of it, but when you take it off, you can look inside, and it's actually supposed to be painted the wood color. So it's like, So this goes in here like that. Oh, they don't show. Oh, I thought they would. Maybe they do kind of right here. Okay. But what needs to be done with these is, first of all, they need to, this one shows, they do show through a little bit. is they need to be shorter. This is why I fit things. And once they're in place, maybe sand it off a little bit. Yeah, it must be some sort of technical issue that has to do with the small number of bristles that quality control needs to just be a whole lot tighter. Well, like you're finding there, the 5-0 brush costs as much as a set of other larger brushes. What's up with that? I think I'm going to go ahead and just finish one piece at a time. I say that just as I pick up another piece and lie to myself about what I'm doing. Maybe do the filing down first. But then, as I saw with this, it's not just a matter of filing and sanding it down so it looks right. It has to be test fit, because sometimes things need to be sanded down as they're fit into place. This one, these are just in bad places on the fuselage. This one really has me worried. It's very, very loose on the fuselage, and there's a good chance that it could break off and leave a scar. You have to be really careful with that. You don't want the file to get up against the fuselage. It will leave scratch marks that will take a long time to sand out. Sanding this plastic, it's quite hard, is a little bit of a challenge. I can't put any pressure on this. This is going to take like a million years here to sand this, to file this down. Apologize a little bit for that. Well, I know it's taking some plastic off because it's showing up on the file. Am I on camera? Huh. Mostly, but not quite totally. There. My director and camera person just were not paying attention. After I get this filing done, I'm going to take some time and show off some of our dungeon tiles. We have a new generation of dungeon tiles. How everything's like 1.0, 2.0, 2.2. We have dungeon tile 4.0, and they are pretty amazing. And they've been made possible because we got new PLA printers. I don't know if you notice them back there, but way over there on that side is one of the old ones. It's about, was sort of for residential use as opposed to like commercial use. One of the best available at the time, but they stopped making them, and that means you can't get spare parts, and those require fairly frequent repairs. So some new kind got on the market, and we bought a couple, like the one, you can see the one directly behind me. And those can do some things that the other ones can't. It can like alternate colors. And so it's possible to print things in multiple colors, 2 or 3 different colors, which is cool. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we do some in-house design stuff. This was one. This is a giant me. This is my figure from the Dungeons and Dragons show. The minifig is about a quarter this size, and it was blown up. Our DM Alexis was able to blow it up, not like an explosion, but like in make it bigger. And yeah, this is a little bit of a piece of plastic there that needs to come off. And the quality is good enough that you can print them on that. But let me I'm going to do that. That's right on the nose. I'm going to stop right now and show you the in-house designs of our dungeon tiles and some of the evolution of how they developed. I don't have a 1.0 dungeon tile here, but I can explain the differences. Okay, the 1.0s, I'll just show you in one. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sometimes you can make them really large without losing a lot of detail, which is kind of cool. The 1.0s, the wall and the floor were printed as 2 separate pieces. And so we have a lot of those because that's what we started using on our D&D shows, the 1.0s. That's why we started making them, was to show them on our show so that our minifigs could walk through dungeons. But the wall and the floor were 2 separate pieces, and so each one had to be epoxied together. And that was kind of a challenge because, just keeping them in line and making sure that they were at a right angle was really quite difficult. In fact, the base, it was 3 pieces. The base part here was separate. It didn't have a plate on the bottom like this. The base part was separate on the floor and the wall. They all have the same feature, which is the magnets in the corners. Then Lexi was able to design it so that the wall and the floor were produced as one solid unit. That was a huge, it made sure that they were always vertical, that the right angle was there, that they weren't off center. And in the past, you could see the 1.0 ones didn't always match up. They line them up. Line them up like this, okay, and they didn't line up. Some were a little higher, some were twisted a little bit, that kind of thing. The 3.0 improvement was the base plate. And instead of putting the magnets in and then gluing this on top of it, okay, which again caused problems, the base plate was set up so it's one solid piece, and the little magnets go in the corners here, and then the plate goes on top. Okay, and these are really good, and you've seen this in action before. is they grab onto each other. They're really easy to take apart and put back together. They hold pretty well, so that if, they're not going to come apart during your show or during your gameplay. Oh, that's pretty funny. You have to see this. This is a tiny little magnet that's used for flames, for example. But with the ball magnets, it's not doing it now. There, as the ball magnet rotates, even at that distance, it rotates that. If you can see it, but that little magnet rotates as I'm rotating this. Huh. Oh, what's up with magnets anyway? This aside, this is really, it's going to be an issue later if I lose it. So the 3.0 ones have these ball magnets underneath the plates, and that was just a huge improvement. But it still required assembly, and the assembly sometimes was messy. The plates wouldn't stick all the way. Sometimes it leaves gaps like that. Okay. I mean, so they're not absolutely gorgeous. They work really well, but Lexi's a real stickler for things looking nice. And we have these doors. Okay, these doors open and close. They're on pin hinges. But in order to get them to work, the lintel, the top of the door, had to be made separately. Although the rest of this is just one piece. The door's put in, the pin is put in, and then the lintel goes on. Okay, you can't put this on and then get the door in. Well, you can put this on, put the door in, and then try to get the pin in. And then the pin had to be secured with an adhesive. And again, this is something she was really unhappy with, because then there's a gap here and here. Okay, and you can actually see the adhesive there. And then there's a hole on either side, because the door could be put on either way to swing one way or the other. But you can see that these are really very nice. So how do you improve on them? Well, she managed to improve on them by doing several really clever things. This is one of the 3.0s. It has the base plate that goes on. This one doesn't have a base plate. It's exactly it. That's exactly what happened, is that this new printer will automatically stop mid-print. It's prints from the bottom up. Well done. That's exactly what she ended up doing. And then the magnets go in, and then the print is finished. And so the magnets are in there. They work exactly the same way. They look the same height and everything. But it's all sealed. So you've been doing some 3D printing yourself, I can tell, when you come up with that idea. So yeah, we couldn't do that with the old printers. I mean, it was possible, but we'd have to watch it. But this one has a setting on it that says print up to this height and stop. And it took a little bit of experimentation to get it to the right height. The wells on the inside where the magnets are, to get it to the right height so that the magnet would fit all the way in and it wouldn't bump into the print head, or that the plastic would keep the magnet from rotating, because the little ball magnets need to rotate inside the wells because they can go in any direction. So yeah, she was able to pull that off. And you anticipated how it was done. Well, that took all the excitement away from it. Not really. Well, the same thing happened with the doors. Is she stopped the print here, okay, and put the door in and put the hinge in. and then finish the print so that the top of this, I think it's the lintel, I'm not sure, doesn't have the little holes anymore, and the adhesive doesn't shirt. Oh my, yeah, you do. Yeah, I can see that you know a thing or two. Well, I'm talking to people who don't know anything. But thank you. You can appreciate then what she did, just in terms of changing the design and using that. So you gifted yourself one of those. Oh, what sorts of things do you do then? You must do some pretty cool stuff with your printers. Or you're still going to keep doing things like the cauldron with the flame. That little magnet I was playing with before it goes in the well here. You know, she's talked about trying to do that, just printing it right through at the same time. I don't know. I think this printer is capable of pulling it off. But I'm not sure if she's going to try to do that or not. The one thing that this does, though, is it makes the painting just a little bit more challenging, because the door has to be painted in place. It's not a really big deal. There's compared to the minis, there's a lot of space here. Okay. And even the back of it, there's a lot of space. And so just being careful with the brush will mean that it's still possible to paint it the same way. I think I'll mention that to her. But then she's going to spend the next month of her life trying to get the doors to be printed in place without stopping it at the top. And we want her to do other things. But yeah, that's a real possibility. So, well, I didn't know I had a 3D printing expert on the stream, but those things are all coming along really pretty well. And we're very proud of our dungeon tiles and the way that design has kept evolving and evolving. So I like to show them off occasionally here on the stream. I'm going to lift them up and try not to drop them on anything and put them away, or at least put them out of the way. The other thing these new printers do, where that goes, every once in a while, this happens upstairs too. You go into the kitchen and see this little white thing on the floor. And you go, that little white, I know, oh my goodness. Looks like it is. Huh. Oh, what a crack up. I just found it. I'm going to redo what I did before, maybe. At the very beginning of the stream, I found that the top of this bottle had broken off and that the paint leaked up, and it's the dried paint. Oh yeah, the rosin printer. The thing about the rosin printer is you need a well ventilated area, because there's that. Some people do it without it, but the rosin printer just produces all sorts of amazingly detailed stuff. These 3D printers are incredible. It's probably one of the best inventions for just doing stuff ever. Well, so the top of the bottle is supposed to look like this. Okay. And this one had broken off and the paint oozed out and dried. And so I got a piece of wood and cemented it on. But over there, I saw, what is that? What is that thing? What this thing is the top of the bottle that broke off. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to take this off because the cement hasn't really set yet. And instead of cementing on a little piece of wood on the bottle cap, okay, I'm going to put, I can't believe that. It was like, what is that little round thing? Why it's over there and not on the top of this bottle, I cannot explain, especially why it's way over there. This goes on here. And it's especially weird because these caps, there's no seam on them. Okay, there's one solid piece. But this one just broke cleanly right off. I'm going to mix some epoxy together and epoxy this thing on because it there's a gap. I mean, this broke off in a way where there's a gap. And I'm going to get this. Sometimes epoxy grabs better if the surface is a little rough. So I'm going to rough up the surface there and here. This is a digression, but I don't. Now that I found this, I might as well fix it, right? Some nice 5-minute epoxy. Yeah, the hardener is the thing that stinks. We have 30-minute epoxy as well. And that doesn't stink quite as bad. I don't know why. It's just whatever the chemical composition of the fast hardener is, it smells bad. Yeah. It's always the trying to get equal amounts of hardener and rosin. When we had version 1.0 of those dungeon tiles, we used a lot of this. Use a fairly generous amount on here because there's gaps. I want them filled. At least I can't screw this up. I mean, it's just putting the bottle cap back on. I suppose I could, the calibration is really important. I know that with the older ones, she would spend a lot of time calibrating and leveling. It was quite a lot of work. The new ones seem to do some of that on its own. I know nothing about them at all. I mean, nothing. I have to admit, the closest I got to knowing something about them is Picking the right, pushing the right button to get it started. That's all it was. That's as much as I knew. But I know that the calibration has to be very carefully done. This doesn't even sit on there right. Just, it's probably rotated. Oh, I see. Yeah. There. It's a thin side and a thick side where and it's all over everything. Epoxy is a lot like paint in that it will jump up and get on your hands. It's like it's alive. Whether you come anywhere close to touching it or not, it doesn't matter. It's going to get on you. I'm going to just put this back on and stop touching it. And what I know for sure is that I don't want to touch anything else, so I've got epoxy on my fingers, so I'm going to clean that off. I wanted to show off, version 4.0 of the dungeon tiles because they're just really something. They're really cool. And you can see what they look like before they're painted then, too. Okay. And the process then is to clean them and just wipe them off. We prime them with a spray primer. And then usually a base coat, brown or gray, dark gray, light gray, depending on what kind of model it is. And then with the bricks, highlight a couple of them. That seems to be a thing to do, is to, like, anywhere from 2 to 4 of these, just a contrasting color. And then give them a wash, like a dark gray wash or something like that. And then there's little things like the cauldron, the sigil on the wall, these flames for campfires and traps and things like that. This one was a fail. It didn't print quite well on the bottom, but little magnets, those little magnets like the one I showed you before, go in there and in the base so that they do that. Yeah, there's different. Yes, it's separate. You're right. It's separate for each brand and each color. There's 4 feeder spools on these things. The other one had 2, and we thought that was pretty fancy. And it didn't automatically shift between them, but these do. So it's learning all sorts of really cool tricks about fabrication. I'm going to get rid of this before I dip my fingers in and spread it around. Be right back. I somehow miraculously didn't dip my fingers in it and spread it around. But I think the thing she's working on now is our medallions for one of the cruise lines, not for the cruise line itself, but to be worn by passengers on the cruise line. It like an octopus, a 2 different colored octopus. We're also starting to play around with the PLA stuff. Is amazing too. There's transparent and translucent, metallics. Just when we were doing dungeon tiles, it was like, well, we're doing a lot of these, and it takes a lot. So what's cheap? We'd buy the least expensive thing that still worked. Some of them didn't work very well. You can get filaments that just don't melt evenly, or for various reasons they don't flow that well onto the surface. And so we actually had some epic fails. This nest of fibers. I'm not sure that you've seen that happen. A huge nest of fibers, spider webby kind of thing, really awful. This one, I'm going to go ahead and do these first. The screw goes right into the leading edge of this horizontal stabilizer. And so if I were to just make it even, there'd still be a lump. Do these first before I start losing focus completely. They're the ones that need the most work on them, the most sanding and polishing. I'm going to be streaming all this week, another Wednesday and Friday, and I'll be just continuing to work on the Savoya parts. This is kind of tedious. If it gets too tedious, not just for you, but even for me, if it gets too tedious, I'm going to switch over and maybe start painting the Porco Rosso. I might just do that. This is like 1500 grit, so it actually polishes a little bit too. But the stuff I've got it's used up. Get these little pieces out. I've got this piece of wedge, balsa wood wedge, that I use as my sanding block. But even with the 1500 grit sandpaper, it leaves a texture on the surface that's different than the original plastic. So what I'm going to end up doing with this is, once I get the edge even, okay, across the front, and then get the lumps off. It's going to take a while. Those are pretty prominent. It's just this. I'm going to try to sand just this surface here up to the trim tab. Okay, the trim tab marker, which is what that is. This is the elevator here. It's hinged back here, but there's a trim tab that's separately hinged. I'm going to just, because it's going to be a different texture at this point, I want that to extend all the way across. So I'll sand it that way. This takes a while because the sandpaper doesn't cut very quickly. And it's always, for me, a compromise between, do I use a coarser grit, like an 800, to do the initial shaping and then polish it? Or do I try to do it all with the finer grain sandpaper and not have to polish it? We've talked about that. I'm not sure. Polishing can take quite a while, but then this is taking quite a while as well. It's just very slow. You can see the white there. The white is where this is the high spot, where this is rubbing. And I can tell it's gone when you can't see it anymore. Feel it with my fingernail. This is the most unfortunate. They could have been attached somewhere else altogether. It's very annoying that it was put there. I could kind of pretend that was part of the construction of the stabilizer, but it's just not. What I've been discovering, I discovered it kind of with the submarine that I built last year. I think it was last year. That is now complete and sitting over there under a paper towel, trying to keep it from getting dusty. Is that unlike when I was 9 or 10 and I just cemented parts together, parts don't fit that well and sometimes need not just smoothing out, but actually significant modification for them to work. The submarine, one part of the submarine right in the control room, the periscope tubes didn't line up when they were put in place. They were at an angle. It was serious. It was off by 1/8 of an inch, which on a little model is a lot. And it's almost gone. I can still feel it. If I can feel it with my fingernail, when this is painted glossy, you'll be able to see it. So I discovered it with that sometimes the parts need to be, not just the sprue bits cleaned off, that kind of thing. It's not just that, but sometimes the parts actually need to be modified so that they fit. Test fitting is always important. Because sometimes they do need to be modified. Like I'm pretty sure that the vertical stabilizer, when it goes in there, is that these little tabs will have to be modified so that it fits right. I did a preliminary test fitting, and that was what I found. It's just mainly on the top. Of course, it's on the top. Regularity there. Not really even see it anymore, but I can feel it. And then when I was building the Apollo, it became even more important, obvious that sometimes parts needed a lot of work before they were ready to be put together. Otherwise, weird things show, things that are definitely not part of the original, but are part of a plastic model. And so to make it look less like it's just a plastic model and more like the real thing that was modeled, work needed to be done on the parts. And this plane is trying to get it, to look really good. Pretty good. I'll just say pretty good. It looks pretty good. Not master model or show it under a bright light with a magnifying glass. Perfect. But 18 inches away under ambient lighting, really pretty good. That a lot of work needs to be done on these parts before you can use them. It was definitely not the modeling I did when I was in 7th or 8th grade. I wasn't doing this kind of thing. So when people do display models, the things that they enter into contests or sell for hundreds of dollars or whatever, it's become pretty obvious to me that most of their time is spent doing what I'm doing, which is working on, sometimes modifying, cleaning up, shaping the plastic parts so that they look good together. To do it again with the other side. But, yeah, on this model, I think I've spent at least 2 times, maybe 3 times more time doing this, messing around with surface preparation and parts cleaning up than I'd have actually doing anything that has to do with building the model. No, I'm going to take that back. I think it's like 5 or 6 times as much time. Doing sanding and filling and sanding, just way more time doing that kind of thing than it takes to just put some adhesive on a part and push them together. So as a 7th or 8th grader, this model would have been finished during the first week of streams, and it would have looked like a plastic model put together by a 7th or 8th grader. Okay, maybe I would have tried to paint some things. Probably not. I definitely wouldn't have been doing things like stripping away all the paint from a part and repriming it and starting over, which I had to do with the engine housing. That took an extra week. But this kind of stuff, I mean, look, I'm spending, a half an hour just sanding down the little bloop of plastic that was left over from where it was attached to the sprue, so that it doesn't show on the leading edge. This isn't the trim tab. It's on the back. I got it all screwed up. This is the leading edge. There isn't any trim tab showing. This is the elevator here. And what you can see here, this is wood. Okay, this plane was made out of wood. This section is that, and it's hinged. And these are like ribs, and then the control surface itself was fabric covered. And the model kind of faithfully reproduced that. You'll see that on World War II planes. It's kind of surprising, but it's true. Like on a B-17, they weren't made out of wood. They were metal covered, but the control surfaces, like the ailerons and the elevators, sometimes were still fabric covered. And they'll tell you that when you're painting, if you're trying to do A++ professional modeling painting kind of things, is that the texture and the color of the metallic paint is different on metal than it is on canvas. I read a book about that before. I ended up getting 6 different shades of metallic paint that replicates the process, as they talked about how you paint the whole thing with 2 coats of aluminum paint and then mask it and use toothpaste. Brush it with toothpaste to actually change the surface reflectivity and texture of the parts that were fabric covered as opposed to metal covered, even if they were covered with the same paint to begin with. Okay, well, this took a while, but it really would have looked crummy if I hadn't done this, because and you can't see it at all now. Okay, you can't see it at all, but the sprue actually came into the leading edge of this and left a bump. And the bump is now successfully sanded out. I know where it was, so I can kind of feel it with my finger. I'm looking for it, but I don't think it's going to be visible. Yeah, I'm sorry this took a while. No, I'm not sorry. All of this is going to take a while. It's just going to be that way. But it does make a difference. If you know what you're looking for, it would be possible to see just the very obvious discontinuity where this was attached to the sprue. I'm not going to be too compulsive about this right now. This is the vertical stabilizer, the tail, and the sprue was attached to the top here. But there's two parts, and then when they get cemented together, I'm going to have to sand down all of the edges, okay, including the top here. And so getting this little sprue bit off, I want it to be pretty much off, but not completely, because this whole thing is going to get sanded anyway. Probably can and will use the 800 grit on this. Yeah. Okay. 600. Not it. They're very carefully labeled, these on the inside, in a way that I can't read them. I probably should just get some, instead of trying to save these tiny little bits of useless sandpaper, is just get some fresh stuff. And use the 800 on this, because once the seams are sanded, they'll be polished after that anyway. Do want to make sure is that it's not on the inside. I'm going to do the other one, and then I'm going to do a test fit, not just to see if these two parts fit together, but I want to see how they fit into the fuselage. When I test fit them earlier, they didn't fit. It didn't go all the way in, and left a 16th of an inch gap because the tabs were too big. Whoa, hadn't had that happen in a little while. I tried to pick out the piece and it went flying. It's red and it's large, and I could find it, unlike some other pieces I have dropped in the past that have been pretty scary trying to find. Okay, so these are going to go together, and you can see Like at the top here, where you can see where the seam is going to be. Okay. And along the edge, it's pretty much invisible there, which is good, but I'll push that off anyway. This goes here like this. It'll go. Yeah, it's just not fitting. I think the problem is that this is a little too big. And then I'm going to look at, after I get this to actually set in place. Yeah, see that little bit made a difference. Once that sets in place like that, still a gap there that shouldn't be there. What's up with that? The front one sits pretty well. That seam's not too bad, but the seam in the back is too big. How does it look inside? It looks okay. Just it kind of rocks back and forth. I'd have to modify this. I don't know if you can see what's happening, but the gap in the back is just a little large compared to the gap in the front. But it's not like the tab doesn't fit all the way. I don't think that's it. Try a little bit more. This lifts off of the fuselage, the bottom of the fuselage, and I wanted to make sure that when it came off, and I looked inside, okay, I want those to be filled in, and they are. I think that's fitting as well as it's going to fit. Haven't done this. Haven't done this. This goes on that. I'm going to work on this one now and then test fit it. The sprue was attached to these little tabs, and these little tabs fit in here like this. Oh yeah, that's going to work pretty well. That this is a good thing. Right now it's a good thing in that all these things are fitting well. At least on this side, I'll flip it over and look. This isn't operating. This isn't one of those things where this is going to flap back and forth. It just gets cemented in. But that'll work. That'll do. This'll do. This'll do. I'm really tempted to maybe cement these pieces together today. And then on Wednesday, I can clean up the seams and get them ready to be primed. What's the time? It's almost 1:45. Thing to be working on next is a fuselage, and I'm not real anxious to get at that yet today, as I'm kind of wrapping up. But I think I can. It's just yeah, I know. I'm becoming kind of incoherent here. Okay, so this is a little bit of an issue here. I don't know if you can see them. See these circles here and here? They're pretty prominent. And the problem there is that when this is put in place, and it goes this way, like this. Okay, when this is cemented, cemented in place, because this is what actually holds the wing on. It's not just a optional kind of thing. When this is cemented in place and this is turned over, okay, it looks sort of like it's structural. I can live with that. But those circles don't look structural. Those circles are just part. Okay, I flipped this over and I'm looking inside, and this is all nicely painted and looks like it's made out of wood and everything. And this looks structural, and I might even do something like painted steel or metallic maybe, because this is just wood on the inside, and that might be this is where the wing is attached. So I might even emphasize that, but these little circles are not good. They look crappy, and if as far as I can tell, they're indented. They'd be really hard to sand out. So I'm going to fill those. I'm going to fill those in, and then my experience is that the putty that I use it gets very hard, and it'll take forever and ever and ever to sand it down. But I need to completely fill those holes in. Otherwise, they'll still show. This is a thing I'm going to do here at the end of the stream is fill those circles in. I can't hurt anything doing this. At least there's that. I can just make a lot of work for myself. But then it's a matter of getting them sanded down later. This stuff, like I said, it's nice and liquid. It fills the spots in, but it shrinks because there's a lot of solvent in it. It shrinks. And gets very hard. I want it to go up around the edges. I want it to more than fill the opening. Last time I did this, I ended up two coating it. And the circles don't ever go completely away, but then they don't look like circles. They look like it's just part of the metal. Yeah, I'm glad I noticed those now rather than later. And then I'm going to go ahead and put these together. This is one of those things, fortunately, I can't mess up too much. Because I actually want this to fill in the space so that I can sand down the seams. This is like a contact cement as well. It is supposed to put it on both sides. And I didn't want it there. Duh. That's the little. That's where the tabs from the rudder go in. Sometimes there's just a little too much. Now I have to pick one up and set it in place without getting it all over my hands. Nice. Move it in place. I'm going to get a high-tech clamp. These work perfectly fine for this sort of thing. They're wood. They don't scratch. They hold pretty tight. It's better than almost anything else. I'm sure you can spend a lot of money on very clamps that are made for this kind of modeling. But this is a low budget show, and I'm just low budget. There, that's going to set. All right. So instead of watching cement dry and filler dry, I am going to cover these up with a paper towel. When I come back on Wednesday, I'm going to sand this stuff down. Hopefully that won't take forever. Probably will come close to taking forever. I'm going to sand down the seams on the rudder, the vertical. Hi, Enforcer. It's going really pretty well today. I've got like 10 minutes left, so you can fill me in on how things are going. I finished the minifigs that I was working on. Oh, thank you. At this time of the stream, stretching is a good idea, and hydrating a little bit. And I got the pieces out for the next step of putting the cebolla together. Oh, that's right. People had been ill. Is everybody getting better now? I think, there was this like attack of the flu that was just hitting everywhere. I've been reading about it, that it's just the more people have had this flu had the flu this year than they have in decades. Just a long, long time. And that's, it's not as bad as the COVID in terms of how it affects you, but it can actually get deadly too. Well, now you're looking at paper towels because I covered up the parts. I cleaned these up from the sprue marks, cemented this together, filled this in. On Wednesday, I'll be sanding this down and sanding these edges, refitting these parts to make sure that they fit, especially this in the slots. Cleaning up the fuselage where the sprue was attached here. Need to clean those up. And okay. They were supposed to be one shots and they turned into games. That can happen. There's some little circles in here I'm just going to try to sand out, or at least make less obvious, kind of feather the edges at least. So you can maybe just focus on, I'm going to have to use one of these as a hanky. So you can just focus on like one that you really are interested in playing. I'm going to cover these up. Maybe I'll clean up a little bit. I've got all these. You didn't hear that because it filters out some of the noise, but I tried to put the tweezers away and they got caught on the magnet on the base of the little model holder thing. It's always something like that. I got toothpicks laying around. I got scissors laying around. I got little shards of paper towels laying around. Yeah, so on Wednesday, I got new glasses. I still can't see close up with them. Yeah. Yeah, 6 games going. I'm surprised you're even able to keep track of which one is which. Keeping your characters straight from one game to the next. I can see that could be kind of a challenge. So I would say, yeah, narrowing it down to 2 or 3 sounds like a great idea. I can't imagine playing more than 2 myself. Well, I can imagine it, but I wouldn't want to do it. It would be difficult. Why am I saving these tiny little scraps of sandpaper? I am so cheap sometimes. Here, look. Got it started and it just didn't, and it stopped kind of. Well, if it's not going anywhere, it's a good thing to stop it. I still can't see close up with these. Because I can see close up without them. Close up meaning, within 12, 18 inches. But my far distance keeps getting worse and worse. I've finished this. It's in the done box. Maybe I'll show it off Wednesday or something. And I'm working on this here and a little bit here. And I'm trying to decide what to do about painting the stripes or using the decals. And I'm really leaning toward painting them. But I'm going to get Google Translate out and see what the Japanese instructions recommend doing. Tiny little decals. See bitsy little pinpoint decals that go there. Wow. Yeah, that sounds cool to be able to narrow down the number of games that you're playing so that the ones that you've got are the ones that you're enjoying most. Well, Enforcer, I'm going to have to wrap up soon. Thanks for, well, I'm sure you'll have, make sure that you have an opinion about which ones you want to keep going. You want to keep going the ones where your character is the most fun to play, because that's what those role-playing games is. That's the most fun for me too, is being your character. And so you want to keep the games where your character is the ones where everybody can get into being their game character. Yeah. Okay. Well, the DM has asked you for an opinion about that, so that's really good. I'm going to be only going until about 12:30 on Wednesday. At this point, I have an appointment I need to go to, so I need to wrap up early between 12 and 12:30. Need to wrap up early on Wednesday, but I'll be starting about the same time, and I'll just be plugging away at these pieces for the next. Okay, thanks so much for dropping in, and please join again on Wednesday if you can. If not, I'll see you on Friday. So on Wednesday, I'm just going to be doing more sanding and some cementing and some clamping with clothespins and plugging away at the Savoya here and getting it ready to do some priming. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining in. I will see you again on Wednesday at more or less 10 o'clock as I continue plugging away with the Savoya S21. And in the meantime, maybe starting in on my giant figure or the Porco Rosso minifig. Not going to promise anything. We'll see what happens. See you then.